Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Thank you for tuning in this week. We appreciate you, and we appreciate wherever you're listening and however you're listening to the program. It's always nice to hear from people who say, hey, I've listened to it, I'm listening to it, and we enjoy the content. It means a lot to us. Well, let's get into the conversation, Holly, of irrigation. This is something I think a lot of gardeners on many different levels tend to forget about when it comes to making their garden successful. It's forgetting to, not necessarily watering, but the availability that is out there in order to make the job easier with a small investment.
Right. And that's one thing, is that you can grow, plant, whatever. You can weed, you can mulch, you can do all this stuff. But if you're not watering consistently, if you're not paying attention to the watering process, your garden, have enough water, things like that, it's going to become a problem. As a plant that gets stressed because of lack of water is susceptible to disease, and it's going to take more essentially for it to grow. Just like us humans.
It sets the plant back.
It sets the plant back. Just like us humans, if we're dehydrated, a lot of times we feel tired, fatigued, whatever. The same thing for your plant. So irrigation, first of all, is an investment. Mm-hmm. You're going to pay for your irrigation up front. It's going to last you a good few years, but it is going to cost a little bit more during that initial investment, but that's just it. It's an investment. So if you're looking for a quick, cheap fix, irrigation is not for you.
You're going to be disappointed,
right?
Because El Cheapo means not last long.
Right. But if you're looking for, I've established this area, I'm going to grow here for a number of years, then I would definitely invest in some irrigation, especially if you have varied waterfall, things like that.
Now, we do have a couple of companies that are associated with irrigation in some form or another, involved with water. DripWorks, they provide quality drip equipment and irrigation systems to people who wanting to reap the savings and benefits of using drip irrigation. We have Water Hoop, #1 rated sprinkler for watering trees, shrubs, gardens, flowers, multiple adjustments to that and multiple uses, as well as the world's coolest floating rain gauge, so you know how much water you have, whether you need to turn the irrigation system on or not. It's a floating tube that measures the rainfall, and it's a award-winning rain gauge. It's easy to read from a distance and fun to use. So 3 products there from 3 companies that support the program that have some association with water and water usage, or what you need to put on your garden.
Now, some people might wonder, okay, so do I need to get like above ground sprinklers, soaker hose, mister, a direct drip, direct drip irrigation?
Drip irrigation.
Yeah. So what's best for me? That depends on A, how much you want to invest, and B, how big your garden is, and also kind of how you have things laid out.
Now, with the drip irrigation at root zone, it will drip the water at a steady rate at a certain duration, and it's more concentrated to the plant rather than an over-the-head watering system. Now, there's nothing wrong with the overhead watering system. However, you can have the problem of water evaporating, and you're losing a certain percentage of water that you were trying to get to the plants, that it's evaporating because it's not at the root zone. And the old garden myth of, well, if the plants get wet in the sunlight, they will burn. That doesn't make any sense, because it rains and then the sun comes out. And if that was the case, everything on this planet would be burnt up, because the sun microscopically goes to the water droplet and burns holes in the plants and scars the leaves. It's not the case. So don't worry about that. But there is some things that you need to be aware of if you do above ground watering. Late in the evening, based on the time of the year, the water can set on the leaves and cause mildew issues. So it depends on that. When you do it at drip level at the root zone, you don't have to worry about water standing on or pooling up or getting on the leaves and potentially causing mildew issues or other diseases, because it hasn't evaporated off before the nighttime falls.
Right. So that's definitely something you want to think about, is your leaves are not burnt from the rain or water on the leaves.
Yeah, garden myth there.
Yeah, garden myth. So another option is a underground, such as an Oya. An Oya is basically a porous pot that you bury, and then you put water in it, and then it seeps into the ground as needed. Oyas are a really great idea if you keep up on top of them. That's why sometimes for us, as we have busier lives, people who have commitments after work or after whatever, work full time, what have you, volunteer, sometimes you forget about watering. So something like an Oya could be handy. Just drip irrigation as well. Whatever your irrigation is, very handy.
And these systems from DripWorks or from other companies, they can be as expensive as you want them to be. And they are allowing, you have the option of having a manual timer, a timer, or a digital timer. So I would always advise to get a programmable timer if you're going to do this. That way it will, a manual timer is from one that I've seen, you crank to a certain time and it ticks back, and once it gets to the duration, it shuts off. But you manually have to do that. With a digital timer, programmable timer, you can set it to water X amount of time for X amount of minutes based on the capacity of that timer. Some can be 10 minutes every 3 hours, or a certain time over the period of a day or every other day. And some of them, if you really want to go deep in your pocket and get fancy, some of them, they're hooked up to the weather system in your area, and they won't water if X amount of precipitation has fallen in that particular area over a certain period of time. So it gets really scientific if you want to really get deep in it. But I would definitely recommend a programmable timer. And if you want to go to the next level and get one that hooks up to Wi-Fi to where you can turn it on and turn it off, or all of that information is available and you can look at it. But definitely a timer makes the things a lot simpler. And when you put your irrigation in, you can go above ground, on the ground, or sub-ground. There's drip irrigation tapes and stuff where you kind of plow it in or notch it into the soil. Even with a drip irrigation system that is above ground, you can cover that with mulch.
Right.
There's a combination of multiple things in which can be used here.
So one of the benefits about drip irrigation is that it goes directly into the soil. And if you want to get really fancy about it, you can line that hose up, they're basically hoses, to go to around each plant. Mm-hmm. And something like the water hoop is
designed for that
particular usage. So you can get really precise with this, and I think for some people that is good, especially if you live in an area that might have a lot of droughting, you might have water restrictions, what have you. You can get precise right to the root of each particular plant if you wanted to. But I agree with the mulching. The good thing about mulching, no matter what you're doing, if you're watering with a hose, watering can, irrigation, above ground, whatever, mulch helps keep that moisture in your soil. It also prevents stuff from splashing up on the leaves of your plants, which is good too, especially if it rains. Especially get one of those big soaker thunderstorms. So mulch is good, and mulch helps keep that moisture in. It helps sometimes suppress weeds.
Mimics nature.
If you've ever gone hiking anywhere, you go out, you don't see bare soil in the woods. You see the leaves that have fallen and the brush and all of that stuff. So definitely I would recommend mulch.
Absolutely. That's the way to go with that type of thing. Now, with a drip emitter, some of these can drip a half gallon an hour, based on the programmable system in which you have. Soaker hoses, if you are concerned about what may be made of the soaker hose, some of these soaker hoses are not safe to use. Because there are chemicals in which, when you get down to it and you start searching terms, they're very highly toxic. And so, same as garden hoses. There's some garden hoses that are not safe for quote unquote human consumption of the water that comes out of it. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. Let's talk about rain barrels briefly. Rain barrels are not going to have enough gravity fed in order to utilize in a irrigation system.
No, you'd have to invest in some sort of pumping system. But the nice thing about rain barrels is that if some people enjoy watering their gardens, so you could, one day or whatever, not use the irrigation and water by hand.
Containers.
You can water containers. Yep. You can, maybe your vegetable garden is too complex, but you can water your flowers. Definitely, we would advise to use a rain barrel, utilize a rain barrel, because there's many uses for that water.
And whenever you do a rain barrel, put it up high enough on a pedestal in which you can utilize the gravity fed on it, so you're not trying to fight with it in order to get the water out of it. So irrigation, take a look at it, see if it's something that works for you. They've got irrigation for containers as well as raised beds and ground garden.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.